The air in RCA Studio B in Nashville was thick with anticipation, and not just from the usual haze of cigarette smoke. It was early 1961, and Elvis Presley, the king himself, stood by the microphone, a silent titan in the room. Previous decade had seen him explode onto the scene, a force of nature with a swivel of his hips and a voice that could make angels weep and devils dance. Now, at 26, the wild edge of his youth was still there, but a new maturity was settling in a depth that promised even more incredible music. The song they were working on was different. A gentle waltz, a tender ballad destined for his upcoming movie, Blue Hawaii. It was called Can't Help Falling in Love. And it held a quiet power. Elvis loved it. He saw it as a chance to show another side of himself away from the raw energy of rock and roll. This was pure emotion. A melody that wrapped around your heart and held it close. But with greatness came immense pressure. Every nuance was scrutinized. Fans' critics, the Colonel. The backing vocals by the Jordanaires were silken smooth. The instrumentalists played with precision. Yet something was missing. Elvis felt it deep in his gut. The song was beautiful, but it hadn't quite breathed yet. He looked around the studio. Scotty Moore, his guitarist, tuned a string, his expression thoughtful. DJ Fontana, his drummer, tapped a rhythm on his knee. The Jordanaires, ever professional, waited patiently. In the control room, producer Bob Ferris, a man with a sharp mind and an even sharper ear, was already reviewing the last take. His brow furrowed. Bob was a good man, dedicated to Elvis's sound, but he was also a stickler for perfection. He believed in clean, crisp recordings, free of any imperfections. And most of the time, Elvis agreed. But today, the idea of perfection felt like a cage holding the song back from its true potential. Elvis walked over to the playback machine, listening to the last take. His voice soared clear and strong. Wise men say only fools rush. It was good, really good, but it didn't quite capture the vulnerability he felt when he sang those words in his head. It was technically perfect, yes, but emotionally, it was a little too polished, too safe. Closed his eyes, remembering the first time he heard the melody adapted from an old French song. It had filled him with a quiet longing, a sense of profound devotion. He wanted the recording to convey that. He wanted it to be more than just a beautiful tune. He wanted it to be an experience. He knew Bob would push for more takes, for even more precise timing, for every note to land exactly right. And normally, Elvis would oblige. He was a hard worker willing to put in the hours to get it right. But a quiet rebel stirred within him today. He felt a growing conviction that sometimes right wasn't about perfection, but about truth. He opened his eyes and looked at Bob through the control room glass. "Let's try one more," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Just one more. I want to try something different." The musicians exchanged glances, but they knew better than to question the king when he had that look in his eye. It was the look of a man on a mission chasing something. Only he could hear Bob, after a moment's hesitation, nodded. "All right, Elvis, one more. Let's make it the one." Elvis took a deep breath, letting the melody fill his mind. He wasn't thinking about the cameras for the movie, or the millions of records it would sell. He was thinking about the emotion, the raw, honest feeling of falling in love, head over heels, completely and irrevocably. He wanted the song to feel just as overwhelming. He wanted it to whisper secrets, not just sing pretty tunes. He stepped back to the microphone, the familiar cold metal against his fingers. He closed his eyes again, not just to sing, but to feel. He wanted to channel every ounce of yearning and tenderness into this last take. He wanted to leave a piece of his soul on that recording, something imperfectly perfect that would resonate with anyone who ever loved. He just didn't know yet how that imperfection would come to be. He only knew he was ready to find it. Playback of the previous take faded, and the quiet hum of the studio's electronics took over. Elvis took another deep breath, letting the silence settle around him, focusing on the emotion he wanted to pour into the track. He felt a different kind of energy buzzing through him now. Not the explosive kind that drove Hound Dog, but a quiet, intense current. This was about vulnerability, about opening up. Okay. Elvis Bob Ferris's voice crackled through the intercom. This is take 7. Let's go for it. The soft, tender introduction began. Gotti's gentle guitar chords, DJ's light brush strokes on the snare, the smooth swell of the bass. The Jordanaires hummed their harmonious foundation. A cushion of sound beneath where Elvis's voice would soon float. Elvis leaned into the microphone, his eyes still closed. He wasn't just singing the lyrics, he was living them. He imagined himself pouring out his heart to someone he deeply cherished, every word. A promise, every note, a caress. Wise men say only fools rush in, he began. His voice a low, warm rumble, smooth as velvet. The words flowed effortlessly, perfectly pitched, perfectly timed. This was the Elvis everyone knew, controlled, powerful, enchanting. He moved into the next line. But I can't help falling in love with you. His voice climbed slightly, reaching for the emotion. And then it happened as he sang the word love. Something unexpected occurred. It wasn't a missed note or a flat pitch. It was something far more subtle, yet utterly distinct. A slight, almost imperceptible catch in his voice. A microsecond of a tremor, a breath escaping a little too quickly. It was like a tiny unplanned ripple in a perfectly calm pond. It sounded like a gasp, a sigh, a sudden intake of air, a fleeting moment of vulnerability, as if the sheer weight of the emotion had momentarily overwhelmed him. It lasted barely a fraction of a second, but it was their raw accident. A small, human imperfection in an otherwise flawless performance. In the control room, Bob Ferris flinched, his hand instinctively shot towards the stop button, a grimace forming on his face. It was a mistake, an anomaly. He couldn't have that. This was a ballad for a movie. It needed to be pristine, picture perfect. But then he hesitated. Elvis continued to sing, seemingly unfazed or perhaps not even fully aware of the minuscule deviation. His voice regained its smooth, melodic quality, finishing the chorus with impeccable grace. Shall I stay? Would it be a sin? For I can't help falling in love with you. The song continued, flowing into the second verse, like a river flows surely to the sea. The rest of the take was magnificent, perhaps one of the best. So far, the emotion was palpable. Richer than any previous attempt, Elvis was truly connected to the song. But that little, almost imperceptible catch lingered in Bob's ear. When the last note faded, the studio fell silent. Elvis slowly opened his eyes, a thoughtful expression on his face. He felt a release, a sense of having truly given something of himself to that take. He wasn't sure what it was, but it felt right. From the control room, Bob's voice came over the intercom, sounding a little strained. Okay, Elvis, that was interesting. Let's listen back. The tape rewound, a soft whirring sound filling the silence. Everyone in the studio waited, eyes fixed on Elvis, trying to gauge his reaction. He stood still, his gaze distant as if already hearing the playback in his mind. The intro began again, and then Elvis's voice filled the room. Wise men say only fools rush in. It was beautiful, just as he remembered. Then came the line, but I can't help falling. And there it was, that tiny, almost imperceptible catch, that little hiccup of emotion on the word love. It was brief, subtle, but undeniable. The sound seemed to hang in the air for a moment. Elvis heard it. His eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He hadn't been consciously aware of it when he sang it. He listened intently as the song continued, his mind replaying that specific moment. Bob Ferris's voice cut in sharp and decisive. All right, stop it there, right there. Did you hear that, Elvis? On love. It's a slight crack, a little unevenness. We can't have that. We need to go again. We'll edit it out or do another. Take entirely. The words hung in the air, a mistake, an imperfection. But Elvis, instead of agreeing, walked closer to the speaker. His head tilted. He listened to the silence, then asked, "Play it again, Bob, just that part." Bob sighed, but obliged rewinding the tape to that exact spot the snippet played. "For falling in love with you." That fleeting catch, that human breath was exposed. Once more Bob was already shaking his head. "See, it's not clean, Elvis. It breaks the flow. It sounds uncontrolled." But Elvis wasn't looking at Bob. He was looking somewhere far away, a new light dawning in his eyes. He listened to it again and again, each time hearing something different. It wasn't a flaw to him anymore. It was something else, entirely something real. "No, Bob," Elvis said, his voice quiet but firm, carrying a conviction that surprised everyone in the room. "Don't touch it. I think we should keep it." A stunned silence filled the control room. Bob Ferris stared at Elvis, his mouth slightly open. Scotty Moore, tuning his guitar, paused, his hand still on the peg. Even DJ Fontana, usually impassive, looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Keep it," Bob finally spluttered. Disbelief etched across his face. "Elvis, with all due respect, it's a mistake. A vocal slip. It's not polished enough for a movie soundtrack. Or a single, it sounds raw." Elvis walked into the control room, taking a seat directly across from Bob. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his gaze intense. "That's exactly it, Bob," he said, his voice gaining strength. "It is raw. It's human. It's not perfect, but that's what makes it perfect." Bob ran a hand through his hair, clearly exasperated. "Elvis, we're talking about Can't Help Falling in Love. It's a classic ballad. It needs to be pristine. People expect perfection from you, from us. And what if perfection isn't always the goal?" Elvis countered, his eyes shining with a newfound conviction. "Listen to it again, Bob. Really listen when I sing that word love, with that little catch. Doesn't it sound like the emotion is so strong, it just bursts out, like it's too much to hold in?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "It sounds like a man truly overwhelmed by love. It's not just a pretty voice singing a pretty song. It's honest. It's vulnerable. It's real." The room was still, the air thick with tension. Bob Ferris stared at the tape machine, then back at Elvis, his mind clearly battling the artist's intuition with his producer's training. His job was to make perfect records, to protect Elvis's image. This mistake seemed to go against everything he stood for. It could be seen as unprofessional Elvis, Bob argued, his voice a little softer now, less dismissive, more pleading. A sign of a bad take. Critics could jump on it. Or they could hear something new, Elvis retorted, unyielding. Something authentic. "I don't want every song to sound like it." Came off an assembly line. "I want them to have heart, and that little catch, it is the heart of that line. It adds a whole new layer of feeling." Scotty Moore, who had quietly entered the control room, cleared his throat. "He's got a point, Bob," he said, supporting Elvis. "It's like a gasp. Like the emotion is so strong, he can barely get the word out. It makes you feel it more." Bob looked from Elvis to Scotty, then back to the tape machine. He rewound it again, playing the snippet. "Falling in love with you." He closed his eyes, forcing himself to listen, not as a producer seeking technical perfection, but as a human being. The more he listened, the more he understood what Elvis was saying. It wasn't a crack in his voice due to strain or fatigue. It was indeed like a sudden involuntary intake of breath, a micro pause, a sign of being utterly consumed by the feeling of the lyrics. It added a fragility, a tenderness, that the perfectly sung versions lacked. It gave the word love an almost sacred weight. He opened his eyes, a new thoughtful expression on his face. He still had reservations. The ingrained habit of chasing flawlessness was hard to shake, but he also trusted Elvis's instincts. King had an uncanny ability to connect with an audience, to know what resonated. "It's a risk, Elvis," Bob said slowly, finally. "A big risk. We've never released anything with a noticeable deviation like that." Elvis simply looked at him, his gaze steady and full of conviction. "Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards, Bob," he said. "This song, it's not just about singing pretty, it's about feeling everything. And that little moment, it is everything." Bob let out a long sigh, running a hand over his face. He knew when he was beaten, not by force but by a passionate conviction he couldn't deny. Elvis wasn't just being stubborn, he truly believed in this. "All right, Elvis," Bob finally said, a hint of grudging admiration in his voice. "We'll keep it. But if this blows up in our faces, you're buying me a new hat." Elvis grinned, a genuine relieved smile spreading across his face. "You got it, Bob," he said, standing up and clapping the producer on the shoulder. "But I have a feeling you won't be needing that hat, I think. I think this is going to be something special." The recording was finalized. The mistake kept precisely as Elvis had intended. The musicians, after hearing the playback a few more times with Elvis's explanation in mind, started to nod in agreement. Scotty hummed the tune, listening for that specific spot, and a faint smile touched his lips. It was unconventional, yes, but undeniably captivating. The song, "Can't Help Falling in Love," was mixed and mastered, that subtle emotional catch remaining an integral part of its fabric. It was sent off to be included in the soundtrack for Blue Hawaii and slated for release as a single in the coming months. The initial reactions from the studio executives were a mix of enthusiasm for the song itself and a few raised eyebrows regarding that specific moment. Some simply didn't notice it. Others heard it and dismissed it as a minor flaw, easily overlooked in such a beautiful rendition. No one at first seemed to grasp the significance Elvis placed on it. Bob Ferris fielded a few nervous calls, explaining Elvis's adamant insistence, painting it as an artistic choice, a deliberate nuance rather than an error. Then came the critics. When early copies of the single and the soundtrack were sent out, the reviews started trickling in. Most praised the song's tender beauty, Elvis's mature vocal performance, and the lovely melody. But a few, the more astute or perhaps simply the more nitpicky, picked up on the specific anomaly. One critic, for a major music magazine, wrote, "Presley can't help falling in love is a lovely if somewhat syrupy balladed, alavert love in the chorus. A slight tremor that, while perhaps intended to convey emotion, comes across as a technical misstep. One wonders why it wasn't re-recorded." Another echoed, while undeniably heartfelt, "This ballad features a moment of vocal instability that distracts from an otherwise flawless performance, a rare slip from the king." Elvis read the reviews, his jaw tightening at some of the harsher words. Bob Ferris saw the look on his face. "I told you, Elvis," he said gently, "some folks just don't get it." But Elvis just shook his head. "They're listening for perfection, Bob," he said, "not for truth. Give it time." And time, it turned out, was exactly what the song needed. When Can't Help Falling in Love was officially released, it was an instant success. It shot up the charts, quickly becoming one of Elvis's most beloved ballads. The movie, Blue Hawaii, was a box office smash, and the song's gentle melody became synonymous with romance and deep affection. But something curious began to happen, something that went beyond simple chart success. Fans started noticing the mistake, and they didn't see it as a flaw. Letters poured into RCA and to Elvis's fan club. Not just the usual fan mail, but letters specifically mentioning that particular part of the song. "Mr. Presley," one letter read, "when you sing 'I Can't Help Falling in Love with You,' and your voice just catches, It sends shivers down my spine. It sounds so real. Like you truly feel every word. It makes me cry every time." Another wrote, "That little gasp on love is the most beautiful part of the song. It makes it sound so honest, so vulnerable. It's like you're letting us into your heart." Radio Diaz. Initially wary found themselves inundated with requests for the song, and soon they too started pointing out that specific moment, not as a flaw, but as a unique signature. And listen to this, folks. A popular DJ would say, right before playing the track, listen for that incredible moment when Elvis's voice just breaks a little on love. It's pure magic. The mistake wasn't just tolerated. It was celebrated, became the defining feature, the emotional core of the song. It humanized Elvis, showing a vulnerability that was both startling and endearing. His fans, who adored his powerful stage presence, now had a glimpse into a quieter, more sensitive side. It made him more relatable, more deeply felt. The heartwarming wave of fan adoration confirmed what Elvis had felt in his gut all along. He had trusted his instinct, gone against the conventional wisdom of perfection, and in doing so had created something profoundly avale. It wasn't just a song, it was a connection. It was a shared emotional experience amplified by that tiny, raw, human touch. He read the letters late into the night, sometimes with tears in his eyes. These weren't just fans. They were people who understood. They heard the depth of feeling he poured into his music. And that little catch in his voice, that unintentional gasp, had somehow become the key to unlocking that understanding. It was a powerful reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things in life aren't found in flawless execution, but in the brave, honest expression of true emotion. And he knew with every fiber of his being that he had made the right decision. The success of "Can't Help Falling in Love" was undeniable. It soared to the top of the charts, staying there for weeks, and became one of Elvis's signature songs. It played on radios across the country, graced countless jukeboxes, and quickly became a staple at weddings and romantic occasions. Everyone knew the melody, and everyone, it seemed, remembered that particular poignant moment in the chorus. Producers and engineers at RCA, who had initially been skeptical, now studied the song, trying to understand the phenomenon. They listened to that mistake again and again. What had seemed like a minor vocal flaw now sounded like an exquisite, deliberate, artistic choice. It proved that sometimes breaking the rules of perfect recording could lead to something far more profound. It wasn't just a hit. It was a turning point, proving Elvis's artistic intuition and his powerful connection to his audience. Critics, who had initially pointed out the flaw, began to backtrack. Their new reviews offered revised interpretation. What was once dismissed as a vocal tremor now reveals itself as a stroke of genius. One prominent music critic wrote, eating his own words, "Presley's subtle catch on the word love adds an unprecedented layer of vulnerability and raw emotion, elevating the song from a simple ballad to a timeless expression of devotion." It's a testament to his artistry that he chose to preserve such a fragile human moment. In subsequent recording sessions across Nashville and beyond, some even tried to replicate that elusive, emotional catch. But it was never the same, because it wasn't something that could be manufactured. It had to be authentic, born from a genuine moment of feeling, and that's what made Elvis's version so unique. Elvis himself felt a profound sense of validation, not just from the commercial success, but from the emotional resonance. He had always strived for authenticity in his music, even when the pressures of Hollywood and commercialism pushed for a more polished, manufactured sound. This song, this mistake, proved that his instincts were true. It proved that people wanted real emotion, not just perfect notes. He often spoke about the song in interviews, sometimes sharing the story of the debate with Bob Ferris. He would chuckle good-naturedly. "Bob thought I was crazy, bless his heart, he wanted to fix it. But I just knew right here," he'd say, placing a hand over his heart, "that it had to stay." It felt honest. He understood that moment better now. It wasn't just a physical tremor. It was a manifestation of the intense feeling he poured into the lyrics. It was the sound of a heart overflowing, and that was a powerful thing to capture. The legacy of Can't Help Falling in Love grew with each passing year. It wasn't just a hit song. It became one of his most requested numbers in concerts. When he performed it live, fans would often cheer and sigh at that particular part of the chorus, knowing exactly what they were listening for, a shared secret between the king and his adoring public. He would sometimes intentionally lean into that part during live performances, not trying to perfectly recreate the mistake, but allowing himself to be vulnerable, to let the emotion flow freely, all expressions of tenderness that captivated audiences. It became a signature, a moment of pro-Turk connection. Years later, sitting in his Graceland home, perhaps late at night with a cup of coffee, Elvis would sometimes put on the record. He'd close his eyes listening to the familiar melody, hearing his younger self pour his heart out. And when that specific part came, falling in love with you, that subtle catch, that raw breath, he'd smile. It was more than just a memory of a recording session. It was a reminder of a lesson learned, that perfection isn't always about flawlessness, but about honesty. That sometimes the most beautiful, most able moments are found in vulnerability, in the courage to let your guard down and truly feel that little mistake, that moment of unplanned emotion, had not only made the song iconic, but it had also deepened his connection with his audience, showing them a side of him that was both powerful and profoundly. It was a testament to the fact that his greatest strength wasn't just his voice, and in the end it was his heart that truly made his music timeless. As the years passed, Can't Help Falling in Love remained a cornerstone of Elvis's vast catalog. It transcended its origins as a movie song, becoming a universal anthem of enduring affection. It was played at countless weddings, first dances, and quiet moments between lovers. Its gentle melody and sincere lyrics resonated deeply with generations. And that specific celebrated mistake, that subtle vocal catch on the word love, continued to be a point of fascination and adoration for fans. Documentaries about Elvis would often highlight it. Musicologists would analyze its emotional impact, and cover artists would sometimes try to emulate it, though never quite capturing its organic magic. Elvis, in his later years, would sometimes reflect on that pivotal recording session. He understood even more clearly now the significance of that small, spontaneous moment. It wasn't just about his intuition, it was about the power of authentic human emotion to transcend technical perfection. He saw how that vulnerability had opened a door, allowing listeners to feel a deeper connection to the song and to him. He learned that the purest form of artistry often lies in embracing imperfections, in allowing the raw, unfiltered essence of a feeling to shine through. Taught him to trust his gut even when faced with industry pressure to conform. That lesson stayed with him throughout his career, guiding his choices in subsequent recordings and performances. The song became a cherished part of his legacy, a testament to his artistry and his profound understanding of human emotion. It was a melody that would soothe hearts for decades to come, a whispered promise carried on the airwaves, all because a king had decided that a mistake was, in fact, the most perfect note of all. On stages across the country, from Las Vegas showrooms to television specials, when Elvis performed Can't Help Falling in Love, there was always a palpable hush in the audience as he approached that iconic line. And as he sang Falling in Love with You, sometimes a tear would well up in his own eye as he remembered the quiet studio in Nashville, the surprised look on Bob Ferris's face, and the unwavering conviction that had told him to keep that tiny, heartfelt tremor. It wasn't just a song anymore, it was a story about trusting your heart, about finding beauty in the unexpected, and about how sometimes the most profound connections are forged in moments of pure, unvarnished humanity. And that was a story worth singing again and again for all time. The legacy of that mistake stretched far beyond the charts and the critical acclaim. It became a piece of folklore, a tale whispered among fans, a secret handshake for those who truly understood the depth of Elvis's artistry. It exemplified the very essence of what made Elvis Presley so special. His ability to imbue every song with a piece of his soul, to make listeners feel like he was singing directly to them, sharing an intimate moment. That tiny vocal catch, born of an emotional overflow, became a symbol of raw, unpolished truth. In a world that often demanded manufactured perfection, it reminded everyone that art wasn't just about technical precision. It was about feeling, about vulnerability, about the courage to be imperfectly human. And so, Can't Help Falling in Love wasn't just an iconic song because of its beautiful melody or Elvis's undeniable vocal talent. It was iconic because of that one fleeting moment of unplanned vulnerability, a moment that Elvis with unwavering conviction insisted on keeping. It was a testament to his belief in the power of authenticity, a belief that ultimately etched the song and that specific heartwarming mistake into the hearts of millions, forever. It was Elvis's gentle whisper of perfection, found in imperfection, a timeless note that continues to resonate with love.